News and Blues, number 43. I'm Rob. I'm going to bring you a new film tonight called Shade by the makers of Loose Change, one of the first movies that came out after 9/11 as soon as their official story started becoming suspect. This guy, Jason Bermas, and some other guys made this film, Loose Change, and now he's out with a new one called Shade. And I'm going to give you the first 50 minutes of it tonight. But first, for those of you who are interested in a little bit of local news, and I'm trying, but just not that much around here happens that is of interest to me. But this is of big interest, and we made the national headlines. We found a barge in Portland Harbor, and it turns out it does belong to Google, and they don't admit that it's a spy center, but their best guess is that it is a data center, a floating data center, and Google is fully aligned with the NSA and the global spy grid. They are good friends of the New World Order, and they're here in Maine spying on us, or collecting data anyway. There was another one of these barges found in San Francisco Harbor as well. The other thing is the pot referendum made pot legal here in Portland in the city. However, it's still in conflict with federal and state laws, apparently, and we've yet to see what will happen with this. So there are the two big local news. For those of you who really want some local news, I want to get on to the movie Shade, which underscores the Bilderberg conferences that take place every year now of the global elites, the meetings which were denied for many, many years, and now it's out in the open. Yes, they do meet and plan world events behind closed doors. The Bilderberg meetings, and they're examined here in this film, as well as things like geoengineering, aka chemtrails that are spraying us with aluminum, barium, strontium, and all kinds of nasty bioagents, pathological biological agents have been found in the fallout from these the spray of these tankers. And all you got to do is look up on any day that the sun is out, on any non-overcast day, you can see them spraying their death spray. And we need more people to wake up to this and pay attention and speak out about it, please. So that's what Shade is all about. And without further ado, let us get on with the movie right now. Shade.
The one thing I will say that the past 50 years has given me, I would say that nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. Governments do not operate the way you think they do. Banks do not do what you think they do. The police department is not here for what you think it is. Nothing in your world works the way you think it does. There's a far higher, bigger picture.
All right, we're at the airport. We're going to be getting ready to go through TSA. Well, we're at TSA right now, and just as I figured, they're searching my bag as we speak. Welcome to America. We just drove through the Westfields Marriott. We made the loop right by the hotel entrance. Actually went onto the property.
And this is the hotel where it's all going to occur.
The globalists are incredibly dangerous. The status quo means giving into eugenics, death, and world government.
And the only way you can get back our freedoms is by fighting the oppressors. And the oppressors are here.
You are scum!
You are scum! You are scum! You are scum!
We know Kissinger!
One thing that I'm here to do is to provide a service that the mainstream media is not doing.
A lot of the press is owned by some of the attendees inside of here.
Instead of just harping on them and begging them to cover this, screw it. We are the new mainstream media.
The people inside basically set the agendas and tell them not to report on it.
We are here. We are documenting everything live.
And the fake! And the fake! And the fake!
Uncut, unedited.
All right, we're at the Bilderberg conference, and the police are getting kind of weird.
This is what we're reduced to. I mean, it's just trying to catch glimpses of people in, you know, hiding behind the Financial Times in the back of their limo, which is, it's not great.
And they will be defeated, and they know it, and they're starting to run scared, and they should be, because information is power, and the truth is setting us free.
In 1954, a group of industrialists, political elites, and even royalty set out to form an organization that would essentially pull the strings of society from behind the scenes.
The Bilderberg Group is a group of world leaders, CEOs, heads of banking institutions that meet every year and decide what's going to happen throughout that next year.
The media has largely ignored this organization over the past 50-plus years, and even today, when it is mentioned, it's mentioned in a manner in which you shouldn't be asking about it.
Not everyone in the media, however, is in on it. It's kind of this sense that they get of what not to talk about, what may be considered to be taboo.
Well, I'm here in my capacity as a journalist, covering it for this event for the London Guardian.
I remember you were sent down here, what, like 2 or 3 years ago to Bilderberg for the first time?
2009. And, yeah, so I thought it'd be funny, you know. I said, you know, no one covers this, maybe I should go along and maybe it'll be a laugh. And it turned into an absolute nightmare. I got chased around Athens and ended up wrestling a secret policeman in a subway station. It was mental.
Because the mainstream media in the United States has never covered it until now. London Guardian for 4 years overseas really started breaking in. That was a big deal when you guys were covering 4 years ago with Charlie Skelton. At first, a little bit laughingly, then he got arrested, well, this is really real. And media said it didn't exist to him. So it's the fact that they play that Jedi mind trick. This doesn't exist. You know, I mean, yeah, these limousines. And New York Times says, no, there's another one.
The mainstream media is now acknowledging that these world leaders are meeting, except for there's nothing to worry about. They're not doing anything sinister, even though they meet behind closed doors.
Instead of being humble and saying, you know, I don't know the whole truth, we never do as journalists, all we could do is try to ask questions and do our research. And that's very important for journalists to do. To act like you know everything and to act like what you know is the most important thing is pretty much the attitude of the mainstream media.
They kind of just sit there and repeat what it is being shown on the television screen rather than thinking for themselves.
We've been programmed to believe certain things. We've been programmed to, when we hear certain buzzwords, we immediately close ourselves off to that information.
The guys in here who are deciding on foreign policy, these are the people who are setting the price of gold, setting the price of oil, deciding who's going to be presidents, who's going to be prime ministers. They operate in the shadows. They do not want to be seen. They don't want anybody to know that they are here.
One of the Bilderberg members, attendees, who's one of the big EU regulators over this, publicly has called for internet ID, so they can start the taxing of that and the tracking. That's what China uses.
You know, we just drove up to the security now in press. We showed our press cards and said, can you show us to the press centre? And yeah, no, there's no press centre. Can we speak to someone who could present the organisation to the press. No, that's not available. They're resolutely failing to nurture any kind of proper and grown-up relationship with the press, which is just kind of lame.
The people of the planet are waking up and getting past the puppets. This is about saying, hey, the puppets in D.C. are just front men.
The powerful elite hide behind the curtain of government. They hide behind the wall, the facade of government. And really, they're just a tiny dot that control the masses.
These are the shadow masters. These are the people that actually decide who runs and wins in office.
Tony Blair, 2 years before he came from nowhere to become prime minister, was here and basically certified. Bill Clinton, little-known governor, comes here in '91, boom, fast-tracked it. They like it. It's on. Countless others, John Edwards, Gordon Brown, John Kerry. Obama was here 4 years ago. We talked to our sources inside, people saw him.
We're big on talking about how we can elect our leaders. Yes, we can elect our leader, but you can't select your leaders. You don't select anyone. Your masters who own you will select who will run. That's all they wanted to know. Just which one do you like best? It doesn't mean much of anything.
The rule of the few, oligarchy, is on the whole the most common in human history.
Through a long legacy, incrementalism, and perseverance, the globalists have managed to sprinkle their people in, essentially salt their people into various governmental positions worldwide.
They plan wars, they plan money inflation, they plan deflation.
My estimate is there are about 30 million Americans who really need a job and who can't get one. So, depression level. This is a depression. It's as bad or worse than the depression of the 1930s.
They plan collapses. They plan takeovers of rogue nations.
They want an organized, controlled system where humans are manipulated. They want the resources controlled by tiny oligarchical elite.
You know, Superman in one of the movies said he stands for the American way, freedom, liberty, and justice for all. Well, I like what Dick Gregory said. You're no longer free or brave. You might want to, for the first time in your life, start thinking seriously about where you're going and where your country is going and what's going to happen to your children and your grandchildren when you wake up one day to discover your freedoms are gone, your country is gone, your protections that were guaranteed to you as a citizen are gone.
Well, it's outrageous. Our government's been taken over by the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address in '61. Our money's being taken. They're announcing 30,000 drones, armed drones, to surveil us. The CIA says they're listening to our phones now without warrants.
The real leaders are going to talk now. Mommy and Daddy are going to talk now. And when they come out of the meeting, it's always wars, economic despair, and eugenics. I haven't seen anything good come out of the Bilderberg Group.
As the global elite are escalating their agendas, we have to equally bring up our efforts to document these events, cover these events, and make sure that the Bilderberg Group gets exposed for what they're doing inside there.
The mainstream media has become less and less relevant over the years and will continue to become less and less relevant as technology emerges for you and me to bring this information to the masses, to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions.
Because technology, once again, is that avenue of upward mobility that would allow somebody to challenge your status as an oligarch, right?
The Financial Times of London writer, well, he's a foreign editor, who wrote Now for World Government, saying, yeah, we're authoritarian, yeah, we were secret, it's for your own good, we know best. He's here today. The only press that's here are people that literally say, I want authoritarian world government. He actually wrote that. He said, yes, we're secret, yes, we're authoritarian, because we know best. At the top of the pyramid, it's a neo-feudalistic fascist model that uses socialism on the ground to communalize and get people dependent. So it's like a false socialism. But the public thinks they're buying into it as a way to lift up the poor and stuff, but it's really designed to implode societies and to create a post-industrial world controlled by them.
We are here to let them know that their world government has been identified, and they thought they'd implode the world economy.
economy to bring in a worldwide police state, but instead it's going to bring them down.
We are going to be in very serious trouble because we are ill-informed, unread, undisciplined, and have been taught to bow down and curtsy before royalty.
If you're an oligarch, you say, I get to rule. Why should you get to rule? Are you smarter than this guy over here? I have a technician who can do things you can't do. Why should you rule? What is it about you? Well, my family, my antiquity. Maybe that's not good enough. If we have a society where people believe in technology and science, they will not tolerate oligarchical domination.
If we don't stand up and take the responsibility for ourselves to stop this globalist agenda, we're looking at a world where our children don't understand what freedom is. We're already seeing that world now. The children born post 9/11 don't understand what it's like to live without the NDAA, without the Patriot Act.
You have left your government in the hands of other people to take care of things for you because you're too busy with your everyday life. Well, when you leave your personal business and your children and your life in the hands of someone else to take care of you, they're going to take care of you all right. Whatever decisions they make, they're going to take care of themselves, not you. Because you left yourself in their care, they will decide what you will eat. They will decide what you will wear. They will decide if you will have a job or not. I will decide how much you will make. And you can bet that I'm going to make 1,000 times more than you do.
In Bilderberg, we have an organization that goes back to 1954. Now, that original generation is mostly gone, obviously. Prince Bernhard of Holland was able to hang on until 1975, when he was knocked out of the picture by the Lockheed scandal, which was a story of bribes that had been paid to foreign politicians.
The reason they want to be secret is the Lockheed scandal in the 70s. They're really worried because they're doing a bunch of arms deals in there.
It was kickbacks on the Hercules C-130 transport plane that had been sold all over the world. Right now, what we see is that some of the most famous people in Bilderberg are now getting on in years, right? We have David Rockefeller, who has been financing, in particular, the North American side, but really the whole thing, with his money and his deep checkbook.
David Rockefeller, who many argue is one of the top globalists in the world, although aging and maybe on his last legs, has really been the face of the Rockefeller family and globalization for quite some time. In fact, in his own book, he states that he and his family are part of a secret cabal that is actually trying to achieve one world government outside of the best interests of the United States.
Why should David Rockefeller, a certifiable cretin, get to dominate the political choices of the political party? Henry Kissinger is now going around in a wheelchair, as far as I can see, also quite aged.
Many people are unaware of the Kissinger-Rockefeller connection. Now, Kissinger, of course, is an ex-Secretary of State, a winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, somebody who's been in the public eye for the better part of 40 or 50 years. Now, Rockefeller meets Kissinger at the Council on Foreign Relations and is extremely impressed. So much so that he gets Kissinger to head up the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. David and Henry have maintained that relationship over several decades since.
I never mentioned the U.S. government or the administration. I don't even use that word. There is an invisible government whose visible head is the Council on Foreign Relations in Manhattan.
And the way that they achieve their goals is they have 20 to 25 central members that go every single year to this conference. And each year, another 100 or so are recruited.
You have the very cream of the banking industry and the CEOs of various huge multinational corporations talking to elected members of parliaments from around Europe and America.
This is the richest people in the world meeting with key national security, NSA people, MI6, European security heads, Von Rompuy of the European Central Bank System, and the European Union Council. They're all here. They control the issuance of money and credit. This is it, top of the pyramid.
The Canadian connection is huge. Of course, former prime ministers. We have Pierre Trudeau and John Chrétien and Paul Martin and Stephen Harper. Harper was there in 2003. Just 3 years later, he becomes Prime Minister of Canada. Alan Gottlieb, former Canadian ambassador to the U.S., is also a member. We asked him about it. He denied it.
In 1996, you were at a Bilderberg meeting, and also there was Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin.
I don't know if I was at that meeting. I've only been to a few of them.
Bilderberg attendees have included Bill Clinton, Ben Bernanke, Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Melinda Gates, Bill Gates' wife and co-founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, David Cameron, Rick Perry, and members of the media such as Peter Jennings and Charlie Rose.
We see that there is a long line of people out there that are using their intellect to manipulate the masses with what's essentially mind control, public relations, propaganda, whatever you want to call it.
Peter Mansbridge of the CBC's The National is also a Bilderberg member. Heather Reisman, CEO of Chapters in Indigo Books, is in attendance, and she obviously can exert a certain influence over the way people think just by owning the amount of bookstores and magazines and newspapers. She's editor of Huffington Post Canada.
Then we have former Bilderberg attendee Sean Parker. He eventually went on at a young age to get recruited by the CIA for a web crawler program that he built. Somewhat of an entrepreneur, Forbes 400, co-founder of Napster, went on to become first president of Facebook. His newest thing is Spotify, which is an attempt to fix what Napster broke. So this guy's kind of profiteering off of both ends, and when put together with the right forces, with the right people, he has been known to be an agent of disruption.
Why should Pamela Harriman, another certifiable cretin, the late now, dominate the Democratic Party with her husband, Avril Harriman, yet another of these stupid, rich oligarchs, right? The stupid sons and daughters of rich men. The Count d'Avignon, Zbigniew Brzezinski, somewhat better shape, right? Spry, but also not immortal. Who is going to carry on this oligarchical tradition, and in what form, in the coming years? And here I would look in particular at Peter Thiel, Thiel, actually born in Germany, but now operating primarily in the United States. He is the co-founder of PayPal, became a billionaire through that. He is also a member of the Facebook board of directors, meaning that he has a fiduciary responsibility, I think, to some of the people who lost a lot of money on that abortive Facebook IPO. And he has this plan to create extraterritorial offshore colonies. So I can only speculate what that means. Slavery, prostitution, narcotics, certainly no minimum wage, no health plan, no child labor laws, you name it. In other words, the destruction of civilization as we've known it. You can have Hewlett-Packard fire 30,000 people, as they're doing, and you can say the remnants and the scraps can be moved to Thiel's offshore islands. You bring in programmers from India. You can actually use such a place to begin to undercut the salary levels, to drag down the economy in the continental United States even further than it already is.
If you control the weather, you control everything. You control every food supply and literally every political system.
So what is geoengineering? Well, it's simply the manipulation of our weather by foreign agents.
Geoengineering is now defined as large-scale manipulation of the planetary environment. This is to counteract man-made climate change. This is what the Royal Society published. This is what they put out. So this is their definition, their term of geoengineering.
We have this issue, which we all have to address and is of major importance to all of us, to know that people are modifying our weather. Thus, we have to look at the facts that can be proven about what's going on in the atmosphere, about what's happening, about water vapor and its impacts, about the climate and the weather modification programs that are ongoing. These are real. The public has, relatively speaking, been kept in the dark about geoengineering schemes, plans, global geoengineering governance, and the fact that right now, under research, anyone in the world can start conducting these experiments. So we have people artificially modifying our weather in the western states. California, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, or the city of Los Angeles. It's being modified by the Texas Weather Modification Board in Texas, Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming. Lots of other states are all modifying our weather and changing our climate with extreme implications.
We believe many of them are told that what they're doing is very good for the planet, perhaps saving the planet through this climate remediation.
Do these operations exist? Absolutely. Just look at the US GCRP, or the United States Global Change Research Program. Congress has approved it. It goes up to the presidential supplemental budget. It is absolutely known that they are funding these geoengineering operations.
Our nation and many other advanced nations have been manipulating the weather for some time now. Through government white papers and even IPCC United Nations documents, we know that geoengineering is occurring.
The IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, has been meeting for various years on this subject. They have produced reports dating back from 1999 on aviation impacts on the global atmosphere from water vapor and other issues, depleting beneficial atmospheric ozone and other problems. A group of geoengineers, a clique, essentially a small clique, has decided that the answer to our global warming problems are to release particles and chemicals into the atmosphere. David Keith, Ken Caldeira, and a small group of these men affiliated with various universities have promoted this for a long time. One of the things that the geoengineering promoters, this clique, has been doing is that they have been able to keep any voices that would be in opposition to them or want to know about the impacts off the record. In other words, that they have become the experts to go to, and that the public and other people have no say. They go to meetings, they go to U.S. congressional hearings, which were held on geoengineering in 2009 and 2010, 3 of them by the U.S. House Science and Technology Committee. They also went to hearings of the UK Parliament during the same period of time to talk about global geoengineering governance and why these experiments should go forward. One of the people promoting geoengineering is Gregory Benford. One of his papers about doing experiments in the Arctic was that they could conduct these experiments, geoengineering experiments in the Arctic. The people there could live within the experiment. And if any harm came to them, it was okay to sacrifice them in that area in order to conduct this research, because the research was very important for them to do. The other thing he noted in an interview was that you could very easily take a little bit of aluminum and a little bit of barium, and you could produce these clouds and have impacts very easily in the atmosphere.
You've got to, in a sense, engineer all these so you get the right kind of clouds for the effects we want.
It is called geoengineering, fighting global warming by putting a chemical dust in the atmosphere and reflecting harmful radiation back into space.
You could use barium oxide, for example, which makes big fluffy clouds. You could use tiny little bits of aluminum, which is benign in the environment, and essentially manage the climate.
I was concerned about this attitude that it was okay to do this research, and that we, all of us around the world, should be willing to live in their research experiment. And this is unacceptable.
Geoengineer David Keith made a statement a couple of years ago. He said geoengineering gives man godlike power. Now, I've never chased godlike power. Probably very few of the listeners, unless they're the elite who are checking this film out, have not chased godlike power, but it must be one hell of a rush. And I think what most of us can relate to is maybe a relative or a friend who became addicted to a drug. And in that drug addiction, They have put their health and their family members' health at risk in order to get the rush of that drug. What we're finding in rain tests now around the world is what people are calling the chemtrail geoengineering footprint of aluminum, barium, and strontium. These metals match a number of geoengineering patents that were actually designed to specifically spray these metals out of airplanes into the sky for the stated goal of cooling the planet. They match what geoengineers deny they're spraying, but state that they want to start spraying.
If we take ground-based tests, for example, it does not prove the source of the pollution that we're finding in our soils, our air, and our water. It only tells us that something is happening which is not good, that aluminum is increasing, that barium is increasing in soil tests, water tests, and that associated problems are there. There is a belief or an opinion that the jets that leave these persistent jet contrails are spraying something into the atmosphere that would impact our health or cause other types of problems. I noticed when I started doing research in 2002 was that the trees in Mendocino County, Lake County, and other areas of Northern California were in extreme decline. It wasn't from anything we could ascertain because it was whole suites of tree species. That means redwood trees, that means oak trees, that means manzanita, that means Douglas fir.
You can see how bad the health of the trees are here because, see, they don't have people in here because they're afraid these trees are going to fall on somebody. This isn't a construction area. What are they constructing? I don't see anything they're constructing. But you can see that every other one in this area, when you look up toward the top, it has so much dieback and death on it. Every tree in this area is dying or in some sort of decline. You can see right in here, this is the sign of aging and these curled up branches right here. This is all sign of that this tree wasn't in good health. It's doomed to come down at some point. As you can see the dead branches internally all along here. Every one of these trees is sick, all the way down. Technically it's not safe to be in here because, see, this tree fell over, see right here? This tree actually fell over because once it gets so dead, they just can't stay up and they fall over. Now, every one of these stumps, when you were here, had a living tree on it. Declining, but a living tree. If you look at this tree right here, you can see it's dying from the inside out. If you look here, this is all dead branches. They'll just fall off eventually. Here you've got Stump City. All, when you were here, you could hardly see the water from here because you had all the trees. I mean, this is the most gorgeous wood, but if you notice that every angle that's exposed to the air on the top, these are dying. And you can see all the way down that what's under the underside is not impacted, but that the branches and anything exposed to the top are starting to die. So, no matter where you go on this manzanita, see here? That the underside seems okay, but it's dying because something coming down.
And it's very pronounced.
And it's very pronounced. I mean, there is no other thing going on here with the manzanita.
It began to occur to many of us that this decline, killing our trees, is removing a beneficial asset for all of us because the trees provide the oxygen that we breathe. They take in carbon dioxide. The trees are beneficial for maintaining stable climates. They're beneficial for watersheds, for the water we drink and the snow that comes through. All the trees that we have are assets of not only the United States but this world. At this time, there is absolute admissions by NASA that persistent jet contrails and the man-made clouds they produce are having an impact on climate. So when NASA gets involved with the military in atmospheric releases of aluminum oxide, trimethyl aluminum, and other particulates, they know that this will have a reflective quality, that the particles will stay in the atmosphere for some period of time before they come back to Earth, and that this will reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. If we rely on the belief system that we believe this without factual proof, then we're in trouble because everyone is going to think that we're a nutcase. And that's what the astrobiologists at NASA say about people who believe in chemtrails. They say, well, we don't have any proof, we're nutcases. And therefore, our voices are marginalized and have been since the 1990s. Starting in 1996, the U.S. Air Force declared that chemtrails was a hoax. The EPA, all of our government agencies had declared that it was an internet hoax, a conspiracy theory. And thus, since I can't define the word chemtrails as there's no definition legally except hoax, I declined to use this term because it would marginalize my voice and the voices of those using it. The one thing we know and can prove is that rocket programs and atmospheric releases from rockets from the military and NASA and other agencies are releasing particles and chemicals into the atmosphere which can have negative effects on us. Some of the same that are said to be released by jets leaving persistent jet contrails.
Well, the Air Force has been wanting to control the weather for some time. In fact, they wanted to force multiply storms. They wanted to be able to create droughts, create rainfall. Rainfall didn't exist. In fact, in Bosnia, when they were doing the war in Bosnia, they were actually seeding the clouds so that there would be no fog in the area.
There's a military document called Owning the Weather by 2025. That's an expressed interest of our military. Aerosols are required to corporatize and control our weather. What we see in the sky on a regular basis, these long white trails that do not dissipate, they actually form artificial clouds and block the sun, is an expressed goal of geoengineers.
Aerosols are discussed in these papers time and time again. So what are these aerosols?
They talk about how they need to spray these metal particulates less than 2 microns in diameter into our upper atmosphere to shield us from radiation, and this is supposed to be good for us.
David Keith talked about using aluminum oxide to be released by small airplanes or jets, and he talked about having to use water vapor as the medium, whereby an aluminum oxide gas could be sprayed into the water vapor produced by jets, and that the rate of flow, by controlling it, they could control the size of the particles. And the smaller the particle size in controlling this process, the longer these particles would remain in the atmosphere.
The metal particulate, which are nanoparticles, they act as what's called cloud condensation nuclei. So when they're introduced into the atmosphere, instead of water, when it evaporates, condensing and forming as clouds, it will actually condense on this metal particulate, and instead of falling as rain, it drifts.
One of the most interesting interviews I've ever conducted was with an actual chemtrail whistleblower. Now this whistleblower wouldn't come forward and do another interview for this film that you're watching right now because they were threatened.
I was not an employee, I was a civilian contractor for Evergreen Air Services there in Marana. And while I was there, I had several different job descriptions. The first of which was a civilian aircraft, and it was outfitted as a civilian aircraft, 727-200 series, in which repairs were effected to the 727 structural overhaul. Evergreen prefers to hire ex-military personnel. They do not like civilians working there en masse. The only time that they bring in civilians is when they're in a pinch for personnel that are capable, or if they are in a pinch for people with certain expertise above and beyond their standard personnel that are there. While I was there in 1991, The main and large issue that was going on there is that Evergreen had a contract with NASA with an issue of the NASA 747 space shuttle carriers. I was one of the individuals working in the sheet metal shop that received parts off of those aircraft, performed the repairs, and then sent them out with the ex-military personnel to reinstall them on the aircraft. Did work on 727s there, which were, the 727s were in fact civilian-seated non-cargo aircraft used for transporting people. During that time, there were 5 747s, of which I was a crew member, a maintenance crew member, which retrofitted 5 cargo 747s. The cargo bays were retrofitted, overhauled, repaired with liquid storage tanks with capabilities of discharge. Now, how many of them they did after I left, how many of them they did before I was there, I don't know. But I do know for a fact that 5 of them were done during my tenure there in that 3 months that I was there. I have spoke with people and other employees and contractors that have worked there, that they had seen and witnessed all kinds of nefarious activities over the years. I worked there for that 1 3-month period, and quite frankly, I have no desire to return.
At night, those aerosols act as a blanket and they trap heat and actually exacerbate global warming. We've seen a great increase in nighttime highs since these programs have really been ramped up in the past 10 to 15 years.
We know from research recently conducted by Stanford Studies and earlier research by NASA that persistent jet contrails change our climate and are warming areas now like the Arctic and Alaska, and that aviation impacts, because water vapor is a greenhouse gas, is beginning to increase these temperatures each year dramatically over time. The issue becomes for all of us with water vapor is that it's a greenhouse gas, it's one of the major players in warming, and the jets producing the man-made clouds, according to NASA, are increasing warming. The powers that be do not want to talk about water vapor and its impacts because we could take care of that problem right now very easily by putting restrictions on the amount of water vapor that aviation produces. The small click is not offset with anyone talking about the impacts that these programs would have on air pollution, water pollution, crop production, the reduction of direct sunlight reaching the earth on human health, the reduction of direct sunlight on solar panel power production.
A big concern of ours is this: geoengineering programs shred our ozone. Geoengineers are very open about this. Anytime you put particulate aerosols into our atmosphere, it will affect the ozone. We now have a major ozone hole over the northern hemisphere.
The chain reaction that occurs begins to reduce the amount of direct sunlight and can reduce photosynthesis, which all crops, trees, plants, and everything need to survive.
We now have an issue called global dimming. The Earth is now receiving 20% less sun than it did just a couple of decades ago. So it's of great concern. There's nothing left untouched on the planet that this does not affect.
This is referred to in these documents as SRM, or Solar Radiation Management. And what does solar radiation management mean? It means blocking the sun.
The USDA estimate that crop loss in 2030 will double due to abiotic stress. What is abiotic stress? Abiotic stress is everything that chemtrail geoengineering programs create. It's the drought conditions, it's heavy metal contamination, it's too much moisture, it's also fungal overgrowth. Because our sun is blocked, we have an overgrowth in fungus, which is destroying a lot of our crop.
More molds, mildews, fungus, and pests are able to proliferate because of the warmer temperatures at night caused by the man-made cloud cover produced by the jets.
Geoengineers are very open about the fact that geoengineering creates drought. And if you look at the global drought monitor, most of the world now is in drought. Geoengineers state that geoengineering will create droughts in Africa and Asia. Guess what? We have droughts in Africa and Asia. Every day they spray, they are destroying our protective layer. And again, no ozone, no life on the planet. Many people now are beginning to notice that they burn very quickly when they go out into the sun. The reason for that, again, is our protective layer is being shredded every day. No protective layer, no life on this planet.
These experiments, and with global weather patterns and with jet streams and all kinds of things, can get out of hand and can have impacts on people worldwide.
And they're actually terraforming our planet. That's right, they're terraforming our planet. They're changing the very environment that we live in, and they're making it hard for humans to live in this atmosphere, hard for our plants to live, hard for our animals to live. We are not going to have a future. This is a big issue.
Yes, we can geoengineer our atmosphere, but we're also working on geoengineering the oceans with ocean iron fertilization program, which was and has been initiated to show that it's not successful and causes harm to our oceans.
We're seeing the ramifications of this geoengineering in our everyday lives. We're seeing soil being polluted with the agents that are being sprayed: barium, aluminum oxide, and strontium.
Now what happens is when the chemtrails start to descend upon the Earth, it oxidizes into what's known as aluminum oxide. This acidifies the soil, devastating crops, water. It can go in and actually make so fish can't take oxygen from the water anymore. This causes them, of course, to die. And we also have research from New Jersey that shows that not only full-grown plants, but seedlings are devastated by this as well.
Aluminum in soils is not good for tree health because aluminum gets into the tree roots, and then it prevents the trees from uptaking enough moisture, water, and nutrients to survive. And so it looks like the trees are dying because of lack of water and drought, when in reality, once aluminum is into the root system, they can be dying because they can't uptake the natural things that they need, nutrients and water, in order to survive. The Texas Weather Modification Board has authorized the use of sea salt as a particulate that's used. Well, every time those clouds rain out after they have been seeded with salt, salt reaches the earth. And it's going to have its impact on freshwater systems, marine life, agriculture, crop production, because the more salt in the soil you have, the less productive it becomes.
Through the sterilization of our soils and thus the destruction of our crops, natural organic farmers are now having a difficult time growing natural organic food.
I mean, we have percolate in the vegetables. We have all kinds of things going on, rocket fuel, gas, all these horrible contaminants, and I can tell you it's from what they're doing in the sky.
The chain reaction that takes place will reduce the amount of food that the earth can provide for us, because it changes the soil, changes the pH, and reduces the power generation that plants need, photosynthesis, for growing tall and strong.
The concern for many of us is that if these programs continue, we will not be able to grow anything naturally unless it's a Monsanto abiotic stress resistant genetically modified seed. A number of these crops are what are called terminator seeds. They do not regenerate. So year after year after year, the farmer has to go back to Monsanto, which literally puts the farmers in complete debt. The farmers that are not able to recoup their losses due to the flooding, due to the drought this summer, now are selling their crops for pennies on the dollar. There's a company that's owned by George Soros now that is buying up that property, again at pennies on the dollar. That's an objective of Agenda 21. Once these entities have complete control, they can literally control what crops grow, how much grows, how many people get food. These are natural systems. But through the death and destruction of our natural systems, they come in with their solution, which is genetic modification. And in that genetic modification, they literally usurp the authority of nature or the authority of God, and they bring it under the authority of corporations. The sun drives life here on our planet. We need vitamin D3, which nourishes us, produces certain hormones. Vitamin D deficiency is something that's very common now.
It reduces the amount of direct sunlight that hits our skin when we're outdoors, causing a lack of vitamin D in humans. This lack of vitamin D from this man-made cloud cover and these reflective particles leads to human health problems which are already being identified in the United States. One of them in recent years has been the advance of rickets, which is almost an epidemic proportion. Not since the time when children were forced to work in coal mines at the turn of the century, instead of going to school and being outdoors during the day, have we seen an epidemic of rickets like is occurring across the United States at this time.
We have aluminum, which we know is linked to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, other neurological disorders.
We have seen aluminum-related illnesses go through the roof in Riverside County. We've had over 260% increase. We have autism, ADD, and again, Alzheimer's, all going through the roof.
I came to the conclusion that aluminum-coated fiberglass, or chaff particulates, were used by the ton and released worldwide by the ton for many, many years. These particulates stay in the atmosphere for approximately 20 hours, more or less.
Aluminum, according to the physicians that we've spoken to, actually builds up in the body, so it will accumulate, and if it's not flushed out or chelated, it will compromise the health of an individual. Barium compromises our immune system.
What this means is that after barium exposure, you're actually more prone to virtually all diseases across the board.
We have seen respiratory mortality go from number 8 down to number 3 in the past 6 years. The day-to-day breathing in of these heavy metals will impact our health in a very negative way, leading to cancers and a number of other illnesses.
We do know from studies that putting sulfur up means that it's going to come back down. And in the state of California, it is noted that sulfur can cause reproductive toxicity. And the state of California is required by law to notify the public of any chemicals that can cause cancer or reproductive toxicity, and sulfur is definitely on this list. So these programs are dangerous to us and should be controlled, and the public should be more informed, and that no individual corporation should be able to conduct these programs without public oversight and public consent. And this is a major issue that we're going to be facing in the future more and more.
We're headed up to Mojave County, Golden Valley, Arizona right now. We're going to meet Aldi Chico. This guy has had blood tests done. He's actually found toxins in his blood. He believes it's related to chemtrail activity. And we're going to go follow up with him and see exactly, his side of everything and why he thinks he's being poisoned from these chemtrails, and if Mojave County, in fact, is some type of heavy spray area.
My name's Al DeChico, and I live in Golden Valley, Arizona, which is in Mojave County. And I'm here, or you're here, for me to tell you a little bit about what happened in regards to toxins in the rain here and in many people's blood. People weren't feeling well. I wasn't feeling real well. I was having symptoms of respiratory irritation and almost failure, heart palpitations, a lot of sinus problems, a lot of coughing, a lot of mucus, just really gross,
About 2 years ago, a friend of mine, Mr. DeChico, he started to tell me about he didn't feel well. He had problem with respiration, and I realized I wasn't feeling well either myself. I am 44 now. I was 42 about then, and I'm pretty healthy. I do not eat any processed food. I grow my own food. I drink water from my own well. The last 6 years since I moved to Arizona, I really live some sort of very natural, simple life. So I didn't understand why my health was starting to get weird.
So I went to the doctor. It was on a day when we were getting bombarded in Kingman up here with a lot of jet traffic and crisscrosses all over the sky, spreading out into haze. And I walked into the doctor's office, pointed up the sky. I said, "You see this? Rumor has it that this is barium, strontium, and aluminum, and I want to get tested for it." And the doctor that I was seeing at the time, she was very good, and she said, "Sure, no problem." She wrote the order. I had it tested, and it came back really high.
So I started to notice and learn that our sky was different, and it doesn't take to be a genius or to be a PH. You see airplanes that make no sense, especially because there is a pattern that was really out of control. Just to let you know, some days here we really rarely see few planes. They're really high altitude, they don't leave no trails, especially because, you know, there is not really much of humidity here. We're high desert, about 3,500 feet. Some days we really cannot even see the blue of the sky because there are so many planes that they create like a fog.
And I had heard of geoengineering and chemtrails in the late 90s, but didn't really pay much attention to it.
For example, I forget things. I realize that during the day when they're spraying, I forget things. I can now even remember sometime my name. I mean, seriously, stuff I was laughing at myself. I don't remember where I left my keys. So I started to document myself. Alan, my wife, called me and he said, "Listen, you gotta do this blood test." I just did it for the barium. I even didn't know what was barium, but me and my wife, we did a barium test, and also the aluminum. Bottom line, we had levels above, at least 800% above what's supposed to be the maximum recommended by the lab test.
What came back was very high barium, 190. Let's see, reporting limit is 11. 11, and that was 190.
We went to our local doctor. Of course, he has no idea, so he put it on record. These levels, they're not what a normal person is supposed to have. And yes, they can be deleterious for your health, can be dangerous. Me and my wife, after we received the result of this blood test, we started to be really concerned. After little research, yes, I had all the symptoms of barium intoxication.
Back in 2011, in July is when I did the rain and my first blood test. The rain showed aluminum very high, 321, barium 7.4, strontium 5.5. I retested again January 2012. The strontium was very high, 35, with, let's see, strontium is supposed to be 11. Reporting limit is 11. It's now 40. I was retested here in July.
We tried to find, first of all, a solution. The solution, we wanted to see if it was just us, me, Alan, and my wife, or somebody else. We started to have a pool of people, about 20 people, and we really encouraged them to go to do their blood test. These people, they live in different areas between Golden Valley, Kingman, Bullhead, some also in Phoenix, some also in Texas, okay? As I said, we have about 20 people, and about 90% came back with a very high levels of barium or aluminum.
It's really irritating because I've testified to the health department here, to the board of supervisors. We've been in touch with the governor's office, and nobody wants to do anything as far as really determining where these toxins are coming from.
There you have it, the first part of Shade. I will bring you the remainder of it the next time, and I hope you tune in again to News and Blues. I'm Rob Speer. Good night.
Cleaning faces in the checkout counter at the Church of Fame.